Good morning. Today we start the book of Ecclesiastes. I'm on a little bit early. Apologize for not letting you know that. Got some appointments I got to take off for. A little bit on the earlier side today. The book of Ecclesiastes is one that it's kind of hard to understand in a lot of ways. You know, depending on the version of your Bible, it may start out vanity, says the preacher. Vanity is all is vanity, or meaningless, or foolishness is all is foolishness. I mean, and it talks about what is the meaning of life. You know, in so many ways. So this book asks some questions that can make us kind of think and wonder about what is the meaning of life. And part of what King Solomon says in here is that without God in your life, you know, existence is meaningless. And so that's kind of where he starts out with this vanity, all is vanity, or meaningless, all is meaningless, or foolishness, all is foolishness, whatever and maybe your Bible might have some other words there too. I don't know what they all start out with, but you know, that's verse 2. And verse 3 is, what profit has a man from his labor, which he toils under the sun? One generation passes away and another one comes along. You know, I mean, what's the purpose of life? You know, what's the meaning of life? And you know, it's just, you know, it says the sun rises and sun goes down. The wind goes to the south, turns and goes to the north. The world's around, you know, comes and goes. Rivers run to the sea, but they never get full. You know, and I mean, it's just, you know, the life cycle just, you know, goes on and on and on, and what real difference does it make? You know, and in verse 13 he says, I set my heart to seek and search out wisdom concerning all that is done under heaven. You know, this burdensome task God has given to the Son of Man, you know. And then verse 14 ends with, all is vanity and grasping for the wind. You know, it's what is the point? You know, in so many ways. Verse 15 to start, what is crooked cannot be made straight, and we know the kind of that. You know, something gets bent, and you try to straighten it out, or you know, something like a paper clip that is bent, and you can't get it back to the way it was. You know, once it's out of whack, it doesn't get straightened back out again. And in this Bible I'm looking at today, on verse 2, you know, I've got that circle, vanity of all vanities, and then I say to 12 to 14, you know, and that's just kind of quoted some of that. And then it says, go to chapter 2, verse 18, and you know, and you know, I hated my labor which I toiled, but it, you know, skipping through it isn't always the best thing to do either. But you know, there's a lot in here that just kind of makes us think and wonder. Verse 18, chapter 1, the last verse, for in much wisdom is much grief, much vexation, much frustration, you know, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. And, you know, the more we know, the better we are, or, I mean, the more we know, we realize, you know, maybe how little we know. And I think that's one of the things of a person that, you know, seeks knowledge, is the more you seek knowledge, the more you study, the more you read, the more you realize you just can't know it all. I mean, and there's just, you just can't do it. Chapter 2 starts with, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with laughter. I will joy in pleasure, but surely this was vanity. I said of laughter, madness, you know. And so, I mean, it's, you know, he's trying to make sense out of so much of life. And in verse 10, what my eyes desired, I did not keep from him. I didn't withhold my heart from any pleasure. My heart rejoiced, and this was my reward. I looked on the works that my hands had done, and the labor that I had done, and there was no profit. There was no real lasting benefit. I couldn't make my life complete. I couldn't make my life go on, you know. And it's, you know, it's kind of, you know, doesn't matter if you're wise or if you're foolish. We all die. Life is a cycle. It comes that way, you know. And And that's what he talks about in verses 12 through 18, kind of chapter 2. I turned myself to consider wisdom and madness and folly, for what can a man do who succeeds the king? Only what he has done. And, verse 15, as I said in my heart, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. And why then was I more wise? There's vanity. We all, we all are subject to the cycles of life. It comes and it goes. And in verse 17, I hated life because the work that was done under the sun was distressing for me, for all is vanity and grasping at the wind. And it isn't all vanity. I mean, we work to provide a living, to provide an existence, a way of life. And, if we find no value in who we are or in what we do, life leaves us short. Life leaves us disappointed. And there's a saying, if you enjoy what you do, if you enjoy your job, you never work a day in your life. Well, we all work, whether we enjoy the days or not of working and everything, but it's to find joy. And I thought about that earlier after I read this passage earlier this morning, to find joy, to have some happiness in our life, some contentment, and joy, bugs flying around in here too, but joy, joy is an uplifting of the soul, an uplifting of the spirit. We can choose to look on the good side or on the bad side. It's like, is the glass half full or half empty? Well, it's a glass, and it's an opportunity to go on. This little bug is bugging me. That's what bugs do. It bugs us, right? In verse 18, I hated all my labor. I must leave it to the man who comes after me. We can't take it with us when we go, right? We know that. So I leave it to who comes after me. And will he be a fool or will he be wise? And all of those things. Verse 23, all of his days are sorrowful and his work is burdensome. Even in the night, his heart takes no rest. This, as he's writing right now, he's feeling the burdens of life and just not seeing anything better. But then verse 24, nothing is better for a man that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. And other variations of that, you eat and drink and be merry. Well, no, that's not quite right, but you enjoy the good of your labor. You see the value of your life, and because you work, because you have a job, because you are productive, you have a home, you have a family, you have a life, and this is what brings joy that way. Verse 26 of chapter 2, for God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight. And then chapter 3, is, to everything is a purpose, a time for every season. And to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, time to be born, a time to die, and, familiar words. And I remember, way back in the 60s when I was, growing up, I think it was the Byrds sang this song, and it's, it was just, it was one of those things that here out of this Old Testament, out of this book of Ecclesiastes, which some people think is just a nonsense book, comes this, this wisdom, this insight into life, a time for everything. It's the cycles of life, and a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to harvest, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh. And we all know these things. And this is a passage that, sometimes gets read at a funeral. But like verse 8, a time to love and a time to hate. We are to hate evil and to love good. And I mean, this time to hate doesn't mean talking about our relationships with other people. it's relating, I think, to hating evil and figuring that out. And then it says a time for war and a time for peace. And it reminds me too of as we read about King David in the springtime as kings go to war. I mean, no, that just doesn't make sense to me. But these verses are fairly well known. And verse 14, I know that what God does will be forever. God's love will endure, and He will be with us always. And so this book of Ecclesiastes, as we continue on the next few days, it's a book that helps us search out the meaning of life. And to me, the meaning of life is, one of the best things we can do is to figure out a way to do good for someone else. It's like, love the Lord your God, all your heart, soul, and mind, love your neighbor as yourself. So Solomon is trying to figure out that meaning of life. And for each of us, that's a little bit different.